Ballyvergan Marsh is located just south of the N25 and lies 3 kilometres southwest of the town of Youghal, County Cork. It is the county's largest freshwater coastal marsh. Dominated by common reed, it is a proposed natural heritage area. Ballyvergan is home to the reed warbler, barn swallow and kingfisher, as well as a number of wading bird species. The freshwater environment provides feeding for egrets, herons, sandpiper, lapwing and several others. Many of these species can be spotted from the bird hide on the west of the bog. Other inhabitants include the otter, fox, stoats, hedgehogs and mink.
The marsh is important. It's a reed bed habitat, and there are certain species that favour that kind of habitat, such as sedge warblers and reed warblers. And these birds winter in Africa, but they come to Europe in the spring, and they nest and feed in this kind of habitat. This is just perfect type of habitat for them. Many of them migrate through the site as well because it's located on the south coast, and therefore birds from inland, the same species from inland, will come through the area. They'll migrate through it in autumn as well. So therefore, and the same applies in the case of swallows. Swallows come here in large numbers. Many birds that don't breed here migrate through the site as well. The same species from inland areas, from say counties Kerry and Limerick and Galway and Donegal even, will have to migrate down to the south coast of Ireland, and they will often come through places like Ballyvergan. So they might stay a day or two feeding and then move on their way south. Species like, for example, the wren. There are lots of wrens in the marsh here. They're very, very common, and those birds never go anywhere. They really stay in the same place for their entire lives. They're here all of the time. Sometimes a pair of mute swans breed here, and they're year-round residents as well. The important bird in winter here is the hen harrier. This is a bird of prey which breeds in the uplands, and some of them, particularly the juveniles and the females, come to the coast. They leave their breeding habitat in the winter, and they travel towards the coast, and they feed over agricultural land, and they often roost in marshy habitats just like Ballyvergan.
The marsh is subject to a number of dangers, some natural, some man-made.
Climate change is really very, very significant, or it could be very significant, and it is a significant danger to habitats and to the wildlife that depend on those habitats. I mean, for example, here at Ballyvergan, the drying out of the marsh would change its ecology entirely. Also, if sea levels rise, it could involve flooding of the marsh, which would change its ecology as well. You see, habitats are rarely static unless you manage them to be static. You know, they're always changing or evolving from one to another. If the marsh dries out too much, then reeds won't grow, or there will be fewer reeds, and that would mean that some of the reed bed breeding species like the reed warbler and the sedge warbler would be here in fewer numbers, and perhaps even disappear entirely from it.
Historically, the marsh was divided by the old Cork to Youghal railway line, which has been out of use since the 1980s. The disused line is currently being adapted for a greenway. An environmental impact assessment states that the greenway is not expected to cause any ecological damage to the marsh.
I think the greenway will have a minimal impact on the marsh. So I think as long as people remain on it and don't stray into the marsh, which is not advisable because of dangers of drainage ditches and so on, then the impact should be minimal.
Fire is also a hazard to the marsh's biodiversity. Fire can break out naturally, but vandalism is another cause of destruction. Furthermore, Seawater enters the marsh via a dysfunctional sluice gate, changing the composition of vegetation and invertebrate communities. Since the 1990s, almost half of the proposed natural heritage area has been altered by approximately 42 acres of tree planting and almost 50 acres reclamation of marshland into farmland. The stream and second sluice used to run through the marsh, but land has been reclaimed to the south and now forms a boundary between the marsh and improved grassland. It is recommended that Ballyvergan Marsh should be managed overall as a freshwater marsh in the future and control of the common reed be established.
Ultimately, it would be really ideal if it were to be a statutory natural heritage area.
The ecological future of Ballyvergan Marsh will depend on public awareness of this wonderful environmental asset, education about and engagement with the marsh should ensure it continues to thrive for generations to come.